In the programme, we'll be talking to the granddaughter of the florist who made the Queen's coronation bouquet. She's made a replica for the anniversary and she's tried to copy it.
Wow.
Exactly.
Should be interesting. Quick look at the papers.
Absolutely. Reverend Sally Hitchiner is here. Very good morning. She's chaplain at Brunel University. You've looked through them. We'll have a quick look at the front pages first. So the front page of the Telegraph, talking about the same story we've been mentioning today, the row over lobbying and MPs. Freebies is the way they put it. That's the Queen enjoying the day at Epsom Racecourse yesterday.
The front page of the Observer, A&E crisis leads to surge in cancelled operations, they say. Doctors raise alarm as surgeries hit, and a picture of Beyonce at that star-studded event at Twickenham last night.
Independent, they're also going with the lobbying scandal, and the Mail have a story they say about a love affair that has rocked number 10. You started with Doctor Who.
I have, absolutely.
That's what everyone's talking about.
Well, it is, I know. It's very exciting.
You're a fan?
Oh, totally, yes. But I have to say, when Matt started, I couldn't see how he could do it. I couldn't see how he could fill the shoes of David Tennant. So
David Tennant was
really
very good.
knew him that well either, did they? He was kind of unknown.
He was, and actually that's really interesting when it comes to who they will choose next, because all of the different people that are on the books are less likely to get it, I think, than some totally unknown person. So there's questions about whether it will be a woman next, which I think would make it a really interesting twist to the storyline. But we will have to wait and see.
It's a fascinating character. And they do normally choose, as Tim was saying, people who we've not heard of. So Eddie Redmayne, who's the bottom here, is unlikely to get it. Really.
I know, he's my favourite.
Famous.
I'm totally.
Sorry, Eddie.
Oh, I was hoping after Les Mis, I fell totally in love with him.
He could sing it as well, couldn't he? That another tourist.
He would be great. Yes.
We shall see. Perhaps a woman Doctor Who, as you say, a woman doctor. Front page. This is from the Sunday Express. It's an interesting story. Particularly, you work with students, don't you?
So yeah. I mean, this is actually something that I think needs to be picked up on more. The impact of the financial crisis on students' mental health. The university I work for, Brunel, our counselling service has been bursting at the seams. We've got almost 3 times the numbers that we have had in previous years, and it's just gone up in the last year or two as the extra tuition fees and things have kicked in. And speaking to colleagues of mine around the country, they're saying it's something very similar. And I mean, this is serious stuff. I mean, the amount of the NUS did a recent survey, and they said that 1 in 10 students have had suicidal thoughts, 14% have considered self-harm, and 38% of students have experienced severe panic, which is quite worrying. I mean, considering the future of our country, and actually that we need people to come through with really good degrees, as well as the individual concerns for each individual student.
Interesting you say you deal with students, and I mean, is it mainly the financial pressure?
Well, I mean, it's all very complex, and I think sort of when you're worried about money, it has knock-on effects in terms of your relationships and the expectations for your parents. But it's not just about tuition fees; it's also about the worry about getting jobs. And I know at Brunel we've shifted our entire focus to be focused on getting experience in the workplace, and I think there has to be a shift really to very practical stuff. And I worry, frankly, about things like the arts and less practical degrees, that whether they will suffer now because everyone's so worried about everything having to be directly applied to a job.
Okay, interesting.
What's your advice to people who are concerned? What should they be doing? About themselves, about how they're thinking, how they're feeling?
Well, many universities such as ours have very good support structures, and I advise you to go and talk to a GP, go and talk to a counselling service, go and talk to a chaplain as soon as you can, even when it's small, because we're here for the small stuff. And actually, if you speak to a member of staff or a GP about things when they're small, it very often doesn't escalate into something that will make you lose your course.
Okay, interesting. Mail on Sunday, a piece by Tony Blair, former Prime Minister. Ideology behind Lee Rigby's murder is profound and dangerous, he says. Why don't we admit it? What does he say?
Well, this is fascinating, because my other job is I'm the university's interfaith advisor, so I manage a team of 8 other chaplains of different faiths, including a Muslim chaplain. And it's really interesting, actually, how there's been a focus on very PC language with regards to Islam, in particular on response to these terrible atrocities. And Tony Blair really pushes the boundaries of that here in a way that makes me slightly uncomfortable. He's sort of pushing the boundary between extreme Islamists and Islam in general, which you know, is a religion of peace and is something that most ordinary Muslims would want to distance themselves from any sort of violence that's happened here.
It does seem a very controversial area to get involved in.
It is. I mean, he's got a history of it. He set up his faith organisation, but also for him in particular, with his involvement with the Middle East, I think this is an interesting area for him to speak out on, and in particular, an interesting area for him to speak out so radically on. So worth reading.
this amazing concert last night, actually. Women's voices loud and clear. That's the way they put it on in the Independent.
I know. I was very excited because there's also this sort of new generation of feminists coming through, both in terms of singers and songwriters, as we heard before, but women basically speaking out on women's issues in a way that's sort of different from the sort of classical feminism. So these.
In what way do you think?
Well, I think it's more sort of third wave almost. I mean, we've got the sort of Spice Girls and the girl power stuff coming through, but this is slightly more sophisticated. We've seen in the Observer, there's a lot of talk about Twitter feminists, and that's something that's growing massively, and definitely the onslaught of the new technology, but also...
Is that more sophisticated? The means of delivery is more sophisticated, isn't it?
Well, I think it's more complex. So I think you've got the 60s feminists who sort of burn their bras and sort of very sort of trying to fight their way through in a way that's very defined against masculinity, or against the sort of patriarchy at least. And then you've got the sort of 90s so-called feminists coming through with sort of we can be girly too, girl power. And now you've got this mixture of the two coming through. With, for example, some of these pop stars. And actually it's really interesting, just a few months ago, I forget which pop star it was, but someone was asked, are you a feminist? She was a young pop star, and her manager said, don't answer that. So now we've seen this.
So they're still trying to be careful with the word. That's
yes, exactly.
Isn't it?
It's the F word. It's sort of, it's become quite controversial, quite taboo.
Very interesting. Are you back later? Thank you very much. And we'll talk about more later, about the choir later at the Abbey.
Fabulous.
Cool.
See you later.
Coming up on BBC One after 9 this morning, it's the Andrew Marr Show with guest presenter this week, Eddie Mair. And, Eddie, you have a very special guest on the programme.